This is the STV News. Good evening. Reducing COVID self-isolation rules from 10 to 7 days would be a false economy, according to a Scottish health expert. Gillian Evans from NHS Grampian says it's too soon to follow in England and Northern Ireland's footsteps, with the Omicron variant spreading so rapidly. More than 16,800 cases of COVID were recorded in the last 24 hours, another record high. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
Another busy, festive lunch service for this restaurant in Bothwell. But with so many staff off self-isolating right now, they're struggling to keep their doors open, with remaining staff working 14-hour shifts.
To be down that many is quite difficult. It's longer wait times, which we do. Like customers that come in, we do see them and we say, listen, you know what's going on. It's been really, really tough. We are short. We want to give you the best experience possible. Please just understand there will be a longer wait time for certain things.
Some businesses were hoping Scotland would follow England and Northern Ireland by cutting the self-isolation period from 10 days to 7. But the Scottish Government has delayed that decision until next week.
We just need to very carefully balance the risk of increased transmission, which inevitably there will be if the isolation period is shortened, with the benefit that we would get from people being able to go to work and people being able to resume normal life sooner. We know it's hard to ask people to self-isolate.
It's led to disruption on the railways too, with hundreds of trains being cancelled every day. Yesterday, more than 320 ScotRail staff were off for COVID-related reasons.
So from January, we are reducing the number of trains in our timetable to reflect the fact that we're seeing much higher levels of absence from our staff. And we're also seeing less demand from customers.
Health and social care workers can be exempt from the 10-day isolation if they're fully vaccinated and return a negative PCR result. But industry leaders say taking a cautious approach now is the right one.
We simply don't have the data, particularly as to how that reduction would impact on an extremely potentially vulnerable community, such as older people living in a care home or those being supported in the community by home care.
More than 16,800 cases of COVID were recorded in the last 24 hours, another record high. And test positivity is up at 27%. An unprecedented demand for testing, combined with a global shortage of kits, has impacted the turnaround time for results too.
I think we're just trying to pull out all the stops to get things moving again as quickly as we can. It's testing everyone's patients. I have to be honest, it is testing everyone's patients, but it's the right strategy. We must continue to see if we can invest more in it and speed the process up for people.
76% of all eligible adults have now had a booster dose. The target was 80% before the bells. But then again, there is still time before we ring in 2022. Laura Alderman, STV News.
Good evening. There have been fresh calls to reduce the COVID isolation period in Scotland after Northern Ireland and Wales followed England's lead and cut it from 10 days to 7. Opposition parties say this now needs to be addressed urgently here. But the Health Secretary says he's keeping an open mind as he assesses the data. For the second day running, a record number of people have tested positive for COVID in Scotland, with almost 17,000 cases recorded. That's just over 1,000 higher than yesterday. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
Chopping and changing COVID rules have been difficult for all of us. But for this cafe owner in Lawrencekirk, he's seeing his capacity reduced in the latest round of restrictions. With England not facing the same rules and only 7 days for self-isolation instead of 10 here, there's some frustration.
I think it's went the wrong way. I believe if they're going to do one rule for one, it should be for them all. Especially the time of year it's happened again. It's the busiest time for hospitality. We've lost a lot of funding and a lot of lost money, and I don't think it's fair.
Northern Ireland and Wales have both today mirrored England's decision, cutting self-isolation to a week. With Scotland now an outlier, opposition politicians want the same here.
It's really important to say we're not calling for symptomatic people or people who are still positive to be going back to work. If you're infectious and you're still needing to get tested, then you need to stay at home. If you've got symptoms, you need to stay at home. But it's for everyone else who is fine, who's better, and who's testing negative, they need to get back.
The Health Secretary says he will look at the data and a decision will be made.
We hear the calls from those individuals, from those parts of society that are asking us to look at this reduction in isolation period. But I won't preempt any final decision that's made, other than to say we're genuinely looking at it with an open mind and being guided by the data.
Meanwhile, the Health Secretary added that an exceptionally high number of people would need to receive their booster jab today and tomorrow to meet the 80% target before the bells. In this vaccination centre at Ravenscraig, there was plenty of space and appointments for people. Gillian is 18 weeks pregnant and has decided to get her booster.
I just feel now, with cases on the rise again, the benefits of being as protected as I can be outweigh any negatives that come from it.
So, spare capacity here, but testing is stretched, with some people waiting longer for appointments and results. There were a record 17,000 COVID cases today. With the testing regime under pressure, there's a reminder that essential workers like these at the vaccination centre have been prioritised. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland.